Welcome to this week's edition of the Ministry Shift, which is kind of a part two, because at least those of you can see on the screen, we all gathered a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, episode 8, when we talked a little bit about listening to our church communities, and we felt it'd be really good to follow that up with a second go, but this time to look at the wider community and how we are understanding how people are feeling and thinking in the communities in which we're set. And to help us with this, my name is Matthew Parker. I'm the Archdeacon of Stoke-upon-Trent, but it would be good to introduce our three panellists today and for them to say a little bit about themselves. So Alex, introduce yourself to the watching public.
Thank you. I'm Alex Wolvers, and as part of my ministry, I work in a small village in the Staffordshire Moorlands.
Thank you. And Jim?
I'm Jim Trude. I'm the rector at St Matthew's Church in the centre of Walsall.
And finally, welcome to Amanda.
Hi, I'm Amanda Mallon, as you can see, and I am a community outreach worker as well as an authorised lay minister across Wolverhampton.
Thanks to all three of you for joining us. And as I said earlier, we're looking at how we gauge, if we can, how our communities are feeling. Now, of course, this comes with huge caveats because every community is different, and within our communities, there's significant diversity. So there clearly isn't just one response. But if we were to take the temperature, Alex, in Brown Edge, for example, how do you go about kind of trying to understand how people are feeling? Perhaps those you're not directly in contact with or those you see only casually.
I think for us it's quite easy in one way because we live in such a small village and people tend to know one another. And so through dog walking, by just walking around the village where you get to talk to people who are out in their gardens, obviously from a social distance, you get to talk and you get a feel of what people are thinking and how people are. And what we do as a church community is we come together on a Sunday and we talk about what we're hearing over the garden fence, if you like, and how people are. So really for us, it's just being out there and word of mouth and just talking and chattering as we see people on the streets and dog walking and locally in the gardens and things.
Thank you, Amanda. Is that's how you're picking up what's going on where you live?
Yeah, it's very similar. I've really sort of come into contact with lots of people in queuing in supermarkets and things like that. And it's not necessarily talking to them, but it's hearing what they're saying to each other. And you can almost feel the tension of these people that are waiting to go into the supermarket. None of them want to be there. And you can actually feel the tension. And the things they're saying is how an overhearing is how that I'm learning and listening and thinking about what's going on out there.
So a bit of godly eavesdropping sometimes.
A little bit.
To hear what's going on. Jim, you live in a very much in an urban context,
yes.
Densely populated, quite diverse. Do you get a sense of how your community is shaping up during 3 months into lockdown?
Yeah, in many respects, I think it's a similar kind of process. It's eavesdropping on those conversations, but also just in doing funerals, you do get talking to people about these kind of things, and people asking me, when's the church going to reopen, that kind of thing. And it's like sometimes it's listening to what they're not saying or reading between their lines is important. We've also got a very healthy social network around Walsall, not just the church members, but across the whole of Walsall and social media. We need to be careful not to listen just to an echo chamber, but there is a lot of communication via Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, those kind of things as well.
And so when you're eavesdropping, Amanda, I mean, do you, how do you sense people are? You talked about tension, your sense of tension around, and do you think that's changed over the 3 months or so of the lockdown? Have you
the tension is
noticed
still there.
Change tone and conversation?
The tension is still there, but it's different than it was in the first place. At first, they were very tense about being out and how lockdown was affecting them in the first place. Now the lockdown is easing, the tension is worse because there's more people around, so they're more aware of what's going on around them. And it's just been a whole melting pot of different sort of questions. There is a lot of people who still actually don't believe this whole virus thing is real. The amount of people who are discussing it in these queues that actually think it's a figment of imagination and some sort of creation, and not actually as serious as it has been, which of course then other people in the queues are answering that back, and sometimes you get quite lively debates about the whole thing. It's quite interesting to sit back and watch that.
So there's some skepticism around, sometimes the conspiracy theory, sometimes people feeling that we don't need all this lockdown stuff, some people saying the lockdown's lifted. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, Jim, do you get that same kind of diversity of feeling?
Yeah, I think as time's gone on, it's become more divided, actually. I think the two big divisions that I'm seeing are those who are incredibly fearful at the moment that we're unlocking so quickly that what if I go out and I catch it, or if we go back too soon, or if there's a second spike. And then you've got the other side who are, well, it's pretty much over, we need to get back to normal, and we need to get on with our lives for economic reasons and things like that. And in some respects there's a kind of a background to that of we only want, if we see other people out, we want to be out as well. And if we see some lack of moral leadership in places, perhaps actually, well, why would we follow their advice?
Indeed, we shan't mention the particular government advisor who may have precipitated that kind of questioning. But Alex, in Brown Edge, which is a largely rural community, perhaps people feeling less fearful?
Yeah, it's strange really, because I was talking to an old gentleman who was walking his dog the other day, and he almost had a guilt about the fact that for us, in one way, it's so easy up here because we are on the edge of the moorlands. We can easily go out and not see anyone. We have got a small village shop, and we were talking about the fact, actually, we feel quite guilty about the fact for a lot of us, it's really quite easy where we're living. And although we're grateful for that in one way, there's almost a survivor's guilt about it, that we feel almost untouched by it in one way, in a bubble. So it's there, and then there is the tension of what happens if everybody does come and start walking the dog where we are. But there is that sense of, goodness, haven't we got it so good up here as well?
Which kind of highlights some of the inequalities one way or another that we're seeing across the country, revealed by this virus. If I can go back to you then, Amanda, I mean, people are asking these really important questions. Some are fearful, some are perplexed, and so on. I mean, as churches, how do we help people think through some of the big questions that they're asking, some of the big fears they're facing? How do we enable that kind of conversation to take place, do you think?
I think we just have to give them the space in which to do it, and to actually acknowledge that they are fearful, and it's okay to be fearful because everyone's got their own fears, and that's okay. But to remind them actually that as church, we believe that we don't do this alone, that God is with us as we go through these things. And I've been using Philippians 4:13 quite a lot, which is, I can do all things through he who strengthens me. And that's where we're at, because we don't do these things in our own strength. We can't, because it's such an incredible situation to be in. There is no real answers, but you just have to give them the time and the space to be fearful and walk with them as they go through that.
We know, Jim, that a lot of people, and we've done programs on this, are logging into online services, Facebook streamed, all the rest of it. So are people asking big questions, you think, at the moment?
I think so. I think they're not necessarily vocalizing them as kind of big spiritual questions, but kind of like, now my world has completely changed. Is there more to life than this? I mean, there must be more. And they're asking questions about value and where they place value, particularly to do with how important people's jobs are and things like that. And then there is the obvious question, where's God in all of this if this is happening? One way we've answered it very clearly, I think, is we've got quite a high profile in our community now because of the work we've been doing, and people know that the church is out and making a difference and trying to help. And we've had a number of people who've been featured in the local news and things like that, and that actually is showing that there is more. There is an answer to some extent. God is here and He's present, and we're His hands and feet.
Alex, do you think the church will be in a good position once we do move to the new normal, as people are calling it, and we're less locked down? Will we be in a good position to help people think through the faith and life questions?
I hope so. Yes. I think the fact that we've gone through this together, it's, as individuals, as a church, we've gone through this as well, haven't we? We've mourned the loss of Sunday services. We've mourned not being able to meet with one another. So I think as long as we take that empathy with us, I think we're in a very strong place to minister. And also, we do have the hope that whatever happens in the future, there's a hope beyond the here and now. Somebody asked me the other day, not a Christian, just a gentleman who was, again, walking his dog. That's my ministry, I think, walking dogs. And he said, do you think things will be better after this? Do you think that things will go back to how they were? Because I don't want them to. And so to actually, from a conversation like that, to be able to say, well, they don't have to, there is a greater and a bigger thing, and we can be doing this. So I think actually we've got the answer, haven't we? And as long as we can do that in a loving, empathetic way, I think we are in a strong place.
So once again, huge opportunities really as a consequence of this virus. It's nothing that we would have wished. Nonetheless, as Christians, we have the opportunity to bring something of the gospel to bear on the big questions that people are asking. Thank you to Amanda and Alex and Jim, and again, thank you to you for watching. If you'd like to tune in again on Thursday at 4:30, we're going to have a special Ministry Shift Extra on the subject of Black Lives Matter. So that should be a good discussion, and I hope you can join us for that. But until then, goodbye.